Well, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us on our call. Today's event is being recorded and all lines are in a listen-only mode, but we're very interested in the questions that you do have, so if I could direct your attention to the lower right-hand corner of the screen. On your monitor, you'll see that there's a Q&A tab. In that Q&A tab, just go ahead and open it up by clicking on it, type in the smaller rectangular square, the question that you have, and please make sure to send it to all panelists. Once you send it to all panelists, we'll see it, and we'll grab those questions and address those at the end of today's session. Now, again, it's my extreme privilege to turn the call over to your host today, Ann Gore. Ann, the call is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. Hi, this is Ann, and I'm with MicroStrategy, serving as a business development executive and focusing on the needs of the legal community. And like we've said before, we're really happy that you took time from your busy schedule this afternoon to join us for help in designing your mobility solution within the worksite environment. Just a little bit about MicroStrategies for those of you who are new to us. We're located in the Eastern region with 3 offices located, 2 in North New Jersey, where it's a whopping 14 frigid degrees here, and 1 in Malvern, Philadelphia area. We're celebrating our 30th year of being an innovative professional technology services group and a systems integrator, focusing on providing tailored solutions to law firms and corporate legal departments. And so we're really happy to be able to serve as a single source solutions provider in designing, coordinating, and delivering every aspect of an ECM solution. We're very proud to be aligned with Autonomy as a gold level partner, and that allows us to be able to implement cutting-edge solutions for our clients, capitalizing upon the Autonomy suite of products, including WorkSite Mobility. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined with my MicroStrategies colleague, Rick Wintle, who is a senior architect and systems engineer within our Autonomy practice. Rick has implemented mobility solutions for quite a number of our clients and will be able to assist with the Q&A sessions throughout and at the end of the webinar for today. I am very excited to turn the program over to our colleague and partner from Autonomy, Scott Dumore, who serves as the Director of Technology at Autonomy. Scott is one of MicroStrategy's go-to resources for us as an Autonomy partner. So without further delay, Scott, I'm going to turn the spotlight over to you, and you'll present how the WorkSite Mobility solution can assist you and your firm with effectively and securely tackling your firm's mobility needs. Scott, it's all yours.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Ann. It's certainly our pleasure to be here with everyone today. As Ann said, what I'm going to do is take you through a presentation on WorkSite Mobility. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to talk about a number of the components that make up our mobility solution, with a special emphasis, I think, on the mobility solution for iOS. In the middle of the presentation, we're going to take a break to show you a demonstration of the iOS solution, actually running on an iPad. And then we'll go ahead and finish up with a discussion on security, which I think is top of mind for a lot of people, particularly around the iOS solution in what's rapidly becoming a bring-your-own-device environment that we all work in. So to go ahead and just jump right into it, the question that we find ourselves answering a lot of times is, what's really driving the need for mobile solutions? Why is it that we've seen such an explosion of wireless devices? And certainly, I think, the evolution of devices has driven that largely. Compared to where we were just, several years ago, it's a completely different world today as far as mobile devices go. An iPhone or an iPad today compared to, the Blackberry 10 years ago is night and day as far as functionality, and most importantly, the expectations of users. The evolution of these devices has really driven professionals today to expect more out of these devices. So the ability to have access to their content from a mobile solution, anytime, anywhere, is paramount today. And frankly, functionality that users expect, particularly the new generational talent, as we like to say in the workforce, Compared to where we were 10 years ago, it would have been laughable, some of the things that people expect to do on their devices today. But again, today we take that for granted. So really, the evolution of the devices, adapting expectations and the new generational talent, is really what's driving us. So when we start to look at how we address these needs, we really need to understand, what those needs are. So when we look at it from the context of WorkSite, we have to ask the question, do users really need all of the document management functionality when they're on the move? Of course, depending on who you talk to, a lot of people will say, well, yes, absolutely. And that goes hand in hand with what I was saying before about, the rise in expectations due to the evolution of devices. But what you really have to get to is, answer the question, okay, what do people really need? And you really have to start to get specific about what the functionality is. And that's what we did at Autonomy. When we looked at providing, the current solution that we have today, we looked at what was available as far as what we could do on the devices, and we said, okay, what's really going to be, important to users? The ability to send document links, certainly browsing electronic files, searching for content, dealing with email, past and current correspondence, being able to file it, and all the way into full function document editing, which again, just 10 years ago would have been laughable. The idea of editing a document on a Blackberry, who would have thought of doing that? But today on an iPad, that's a very realistic, scenario. So understanding these needs has been key. So along with that, you look at the needs, and you also have to realize, okay, well, there's really two categories of mobile solutions. So, we look at those needs, and then we have to kind of break it down into what we can realistically do on the two categories. So on the one side, you've got, mobile phones, of course, Blackberry, Android devices, the iPhone certainly. And the typical characteristics you see with this is less memory, less battery capabilities, certainly the ability to be internet enabled. But I think most importantly on a mobile phone, even the best mobile phones, the largest mobile phones today, you've got limited screen real estate. Okay, and that changes the dynamics of what you can do on one of these devices. And you contrast that with the preponderance of tablets that we're seeing in the marketplace today, like the iPad. And in that scenario, of course, you've got more memory and more expectation to be using it, casually on the go. But most importantly, you've got better readability. You've got more screen real estate. So there are more interesting things we can do on a tablet like the iPad or any of the other tablets that are in the market. So what you'll see is that, our approach has been, it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all or one solution for all devices approach. It's really been tailored to the different types of devices that we see in the market. Okay, so breaking it down farther, as I said before, you've got the two categories. You've got the typical mobile phones or traditional mobile phones, and you've got tablets. But looking at mobile phones, you've got still different types. Obviously, not all phones are created equally. Despite the best efforts by vendors in the marketplace, you've still got quite a large disparity in the kind of functionality that you have on these devices. And when you look at the solutions that we bring to the table, we've tailored the solutions to these different types of devices. So, for example, in the upper left-hand corner, we talk about the Blackberry, the venerable Blackberry, which is still, despite what the market has shown over the last few years, is still a very prevalent force in the market. So obviously, the strength of Blackberry has always been its email capabilities. So what you'll find from our solution there is, a native client that allows you to very easily file emails, browse emails, search and view emails, and do everything on the device as far as email management goes that you could do on a full desktop client. You contrast that to Mobility Web, for example, which is our web-based solution in the lower left-hand corner, which has been designed for other devices, outside of the typical Blackberries and iPhones. So for anybody that just needs very quick and easy access to WorkSite from a consumption standpoint, we have a Mobility Web application that's cross-platform, okay, and it can run on any device. Going over to the lower right, just going around counterclockwise, of course we have our iOS solution. Now, this is very different, particularly from what we do with Blackberry, in that what we have now is a very rich environment where we can provide certainly the ability to view emails and view documents, but also now to start to do some other interesting things such as document editing. And then finally, in the top right, we always like to mention that even though this isn't device specific, the ability to work offline, the ability to take your content and take it offline, which is addressed through our offsite add-in, is still very much a part, or what we consider to be a part of the mobility solution. So, obviously, when you're working with content in the office, even on your laptop, you want the ability to take that content and have it with you when you're disconnected from the network. So we like to include offsite as part of the total picture when we talk about our mobile solutions. So as I mentioned before, we still have great respect for the BlackBerry. Okay, it's still, as I said, a venerable force in the market, and we just wanted to take a few moments to say a little bit about that. We still very much support the BlackBerry platform. We have a native application. As I mentioned earlier, we have very rich worksite functionality, particularly around email management. So the ability to profile an email, to go ahead and file an email when you're sending it, the ability to deal with NRL links, and of course being able to fully search. These are all important components of the solution. It does have a push or pull deployment mechanism, so we can very easily go ahead and push the application out through the managed environment. And it's fully integrated with the Blackberry Mail application. So from an email management standpoint, this is still a very respectable solution. Now, I mentioned also our web mobility solution. This is our mobile web. So what this is a web application that's been optimized for the mobile platform that can work on any device. So again, for anybody looking for a consumption-only solution, the ability to quickly get in, view their worksite content, browse through the tree, search for documents or emails, and view that content, this is a great solution. It doesn't require any native application to be installed. Simply use the browser on the device, and we can provide this functionality. But again, where things really get interesting, and admittedly where we've put a lot of our focus in the last few years, is around iOS, Apple iOS. And with version 2 of our mobility solution, which was designed specifically from the iPad, we've really been able to do a lot of interesting things and take advantage of this evolved hardware that I was mentioning earlier. So first off, I wanted to talk a little bit about the architecture. How do we architect a solution like this? I mean, obviously, this is something that's top of mind for a lot of people. Everybody starts bringing in their own devices, bringing in their own personal iPads. How do you tie this into an enterprise solution like WorkSite? And clearly, there's lots of solutions out there. When we talk about security, we'll talk about some of the other management solutions that are available as well to help with this. But at a high level, what we've done specifically with this version of mobility is that looking at the far right there, of course, you have your WorkSite servers and your WorkSite libraries that are sitting on your internal network. The WorkSite mobility server, we have two versions, 8.5 SP1 and 9.0, and that's to address whether you're running WorkSite 8.5 or WorkSite 9 on the back end. But we have versions of this server specifically designed for iOS, for this version of the iOS mobility solution. So the mobility server will sit actually in your demilitarized zone on your network. That means that you have external access to it. And the WorkSite application that runs, in this case, on the iPad is downloadable from the Apple App Store and will communicate with the mobility server basically over HTTPS. So there's no VPN required. Basically, all you need is internet access. And from a security standpoint, it's a very secure solution because obviously in the DMZ on the mobility server, we're not storing any content. There's no information that's being stored there that's put at risk. So it's essentially brokering everything with the back-end WorkSite server. And we'll talk a little bit more about architecture and specifically security as we get farther down in the presentation. So some of the key features, and you'll see this certainly in the demonstration with the 2.0 version for iPad, we're able to take advantage of split view. Okay, so when you look at something like Apple Mail, you have a split view in the user interface where you can have a document preview on one side, you can have your list of folders or workspaces or documents on the left side, and you can even have the entire worksite tree or a version of the worksite tree even in a three-pane view. So, some great things that we're able to do, and obviously we also take advantage of, the rotational capabilities for viewing documents and so forth. Being able to deal with document versions clearly is key, so that's fully supported in this version as well. And then also, from an architectural standpoint, clustering support. So again, looking at the architecture that I showed in the previous slide, if you've got a clustered worksite environment, that will work seamlessly with the mobility solution, and there's nothing specific that needs to be configured on the client end on the device in order to take advantage of that. So another bit of functionality that certainly deserves its own piece of the conversation here, and something that's been a long time coming, is content editing. I made the comment earlier, and I think it's valid, that several years ago, 10 years ago, the idea, we used to laugh about the idea of editing a document on a Blackberry or a mobile device. Nobody laughs about that anymore with an iPad. With an iPad, people are very used, or any tablet for that matter, people are expecting that they'll be able to perform, editing functions on content on the device. They may not do a lot of it. You may not want them to do a lot of it, but the expectation clearly is there. And the great news is that we were fairly easy. It was fairly easy for us to meet this requirement. iOS supports a native function that can be tapped into called Open In, and what that allows us to do is take our WorkSite Mobility application and leverage the Open In functionality in pretty much any editing application that may be available out there. So, for example, if you're using anything like OpenOffice or something like that on the device, you'll be able to open documents directly in that application right from WorkSite. You can go ahead and edit it, again, using your favorite app, and then save that document back as either a new document or a new version of the edited content. And we're going to show you that in the demonstration as well, obviously. Another great thing that we're able to do based on evolutionary hardware is leverage the camera in these devices. Again, something that we probably didn't see 10 years ago is the prevalence of leveraging the camera and photographic capabilities of all these devices. These have evolved to a point where it's completely realistic to capture a document using the camera and import it into WorkSite or into any system for that matter, and have fidelity that's on par with what you would get from a high-quality scanner. So the ability to do mobile content capture is key to this version of the solution, and we'll show you that in the demonstration as well. Just a few notes on searching. Clearly, the ability to search WorkSite from the mobile device, from the iPad in this case, is key. But there's some important things to consider when you put together a search interface. Users have certain expectations as far as how mobile apps work, particularly those that use Apple devices, iOS devices like iPhones and iPads. There's a certain layout and a certain method of doing and performing functions that the users have come to expect. And we try to design our applications to adhere to that. So what you'll see in searching is the ability to very easily set your scope, based on whether you're searching for workspaces or folders or documents or email, just by using simple, touch gestures across the top. You can just basically touch the button for what you want to search, and that will set your scope. So these are little things in the user interface, but I think, in the aggregate, they're very important things in order to make sure that the users are getting the functionality that they're looking for and getting it in a way that's consistent with everything else that they're used to doing on these devices. As I said before, we have a section after the demonstration where I will go into more details on security, but I did just want to mention a few things up front. Obviously, in order to support the architecture that I showed you previously, HTTPS SSL support is key. If you're not going to be using a VPN, then we want to make sure that you have the option to encrypt the traffic going between the device and the mobility server in this case. So certainly that is supported. Also, trusted login through Active Directory is fully supported as well, which is very important. That means that users won't have to be authenticating every time they want to connect with their device. And again, tagging on to the theme of users' expectations, you want to be able to provide a solution that is acting and performing in the same manner as the desktop clients. So trusted login support is key there. A comprehensive audit trail, that means document history, is fully tracked. Anything a user does from a mobile device is going to be tracked in the document history, just like it would if they were using any of the client applications like DeskSite or FileSite or whatnot. And then finally, we are tapping into the iOS encrypted store for documents on the iPad. So one of the things that Apple brings to the table natively in iOS is the ability to provide an encrypted store for content. We have tapped into that, so that means any content that is stored on the device, that is cached in the device, as I'll show you in the demonstration, is going to be secured based on those standards that iOS provides. Some of you may be familiar with previous versions of the mobility solution for iOS. As I said here, we're talking about the 2.0 family versus the 1.0 family. Just a few notes on upgrading. Because this is a completely different application with completely different functionality and a different architecture, it's not just a simple matter of updating the app through the App Store. What you typically would do is delete or get rid of the original app and download the WorkSite Mobility 2 application. Certainly, you can run both versions on a device. So if you did have an iPad, or if you did have a situation where you were supporting the older iPhone-based WorkSite 1.0 mobility solution and you also wanted to support 2.0, you can certainly have a mixed environment. You simply, at this point, would be running the older version of the mobility service as well as the new version in parallel. We are currently on the cusp of that changing, and we'll talk about that when we get towards the end of the presentation after the demo when I talk about the mobility features. Just some best practices to consider as well. One of the things that's very important is regardless of what people expect, and I know that I've mentioned that a lot, the user expectations have been driven by the capabilities of these devices. It's still important to make your best effort to set your expectations with these users. That this device is really primarily for consuming documents, not necessarily for producing them. Okay. Even though that functionality is there, and even though that functionality is wonderful to use, users should still be realistic about how much document creation and editing they want to do on a mobile device versus what would make more sense to do on a traditional laptop or PC. Also, obviously, from a deployment standpoint, in order to provide full functionality that users would expect, you would be moving the mobility server into the DMZ. That would mean turning on SSL, certainly. We wouldn't recommend doing it without it, even though that can be supported. We wouldn't recommend a production environment without it. So you'll need your SSL certificate as well as any firewall rules in place in order to allow that connectivity. The great news is on training. Very little training is involved. The great thing is, again, that users have really adopted these mobile devices. They've managed to train themselves on iOS. It's a very intuitive system to use, obviously. So very little training is going to be required for users using this application. Usually they just need the connection information and off they go. So one of the questions we get a lot is, the solution looks great for editing documents, but what about email management? If you remember back in the early part of the presentation, I talked about Blackberry and our integration with Blackberry directly into the Blackberry Mail application and email management functionality. Admittedly, that's not something that we can do on iOS. There really is not a way to integrate tightly with the Apple Mail application. However, as part of the total solution, if you are running email management, specifically the worksite communication server with the email filing service, certainly you can go ahead and set up folder syncing on the back end for your Outlook folders. So any Outlook folders in FileSite that are synchronized with worksite folders, once that's set up, then from your iOS device, all you have to do is take an email and move it into that folder, which will be visible on the device, and then on the back end, we'll go ahead and take care of filing that from the Outlook folder or Exchange folder into worksite. So it's a very seamless way to do it. And the great news is it doesn't require anything on the device in order to take advantage of that. Same rules apply for filing sent email. If you're using the worksite communication server, you can simply go ahead and set up email addresses on those specific folders, and then have access to those through your worksite contacts, and users can simply CC those folders when they're sending an email from the device. So I wanted to highlight some of the key differences between the earlier version of mobility and the latest 2.0 family of the mobility solution. First and foremost, clearly, is the user experience. We've improved it greatly. Navigation is much more refined. We've improved searching. The ability to view an URL, again, which seems like a fairly common sense thing, but was conspicuously absent in version 1.0, has been implemented in the 2.0 family. And then, as I mentioned before, from a security standpoint, obviously trusted authentication is a very big thing there as well. So some of the key aspects of mobility environments, some of the things that you want to consider moving beyond this. And again, we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to security at the end. But mobile device management is something that we're hearing more and more about, and that's the concept of using something like good technology to manage the entire infrastructure. These are all things that we're actively engaged in. We do have a version of the mobility application, which I'll go into in more detail again towards the end of the presentation. It's fully integrated with the good, or fully compliant with the good technology stack. So all of these different things, being able to meter bandwidth, remote wiping, policy management, and implementing an acceptable use policy, these are all things that will be available to you in the mobility solution through our support for these platforms. So again, I mentioned previously about managing user expectations, and just wanted to reiterate, on some of this. Some of the key things, just being very open and honest. Document editing, it's great. It works very well. However, it's not meant as a function-for-function replacement for the type of functionality you would have through something like Microsoft Word on the desktop. The document fidelity could suffer somewhat on the mobile device. Still looks very good, but obviously on a mobile device you're not going to have all of the same fidelity options available to you when you're editing in a native application like Microsoft Word. So something to keep in mind. Also, conflict resolution. As you'll see in the demo, we have the ability to save documents as basically open documents and save them as new versions. The documents that are opened on a mobile device through mobility are not checked out of the system. Okay, they're basically copied to the local device and opened up. That's why they have to be saved back either as a new document or a new version of the existing document. Something called the document briefcase is essentially the local cache. And the document briefcase stores documents as you go through and you view these documents, you make edits to them. Those are cached locally, and that space is limited by the device. So it's not meant necessarily as a full-blown offline capability like you would find with a offsite. There is going to be limitations to that, and users should just be aware of that. Okay. And then finally, depending on how you implement WorkSite, you have to keep in mind, what functionality or what capabilities you will provide to your users. Do you want to provide them access to the entire client matter structure in a mobile way? Are these users going to have access to WorkSite outside your organization or only internally? And how does all this fit into your mobile strategy? What are you looking to provide for these users? So depending on the answers to those questions, those are all things that we need to use to manage the expectations of users in this scenario. Okay, so that concludes the slides that I wanted to cover as far as giving you an overview of the solution. What I'm going to do now, if you'll bear with me for just a moment, is I'm going to go ahead and share my mobile device. So I believe what I can do is bring up my iPad's desktop. And at this point, Anne, as I'm shifting over, I'm not sure if there were any questions that came up that perhaps anybody wanted to address. It'll just take me a moment just to bring up my iPad here.
Hi, thank you. Yes, Scott, we do have one. One of the questions came up that said, do iPhones work with Mobility Server? And I'll pass that over to Rick to answer.
Hi, yes, and iPhones today currently do work with Mobility Server if you have VPN software that you can run on the iPhone to connect into your VPN at your office. But Scott can tell us about the new version coming out and some of the changes to that.
Yeah, so we do have a new version, and we'll talk about this a little bit when we get to the future slide. But the newest version of WorkSite Mobility will basically combine the mobility platform so that one mobility server platform will support both the iPhone and the iPad. So you'll have one mobility server to rule them all, as it were.
Thank you very much, Scott. And here's a second question, and maybe Rick, you can address this one. When documents are opened in an application such as OpenOffice, is there security to prevent them from saving the document to their physical iPad? Rick?
Yeah, there's nothing that's going to prevent them from saving it to the iPad, but as Scott mentioned in the slides, the document will be encrypted by the iOS.
That is correct.
Scott, you're ready now?
Yes, I'm sure. Is everybody seeing that, I trust?
I'm seeing it. I think that everybody else is seeing it.
So what we're looking at here is mobility for the iPad. And what I've done is I've come into the device here and basically just shared. This is a live projection of my iPad. This is not a recording or any kind of demoware. This is actually my iPad. You're seeing it on the screen, but I'm holding it in my hands right now and hoping that I don't drop it as I try to talk on the phone and handle my laptop at the same time. And so what I've done here is I'm currently looking at my matters list. You see on the far left-hand side, we have all of the typical objects that you would expect to see in WorkSite. So I've got, my matters list. I've got my recent matters. Notice that down in the lower left-hand corner, we have an icon that we can use to hide or expose the WorkSite tree. I can go into my document work list or my recent documents. You see there that I'm looking at pretty much everything in my work list right now. And as I mentioned in the presentation about the functionality, we have little buttons across the top there that you can simply tap on to filter the content. So if I wanted to look just at email, I can go ahead and do that. If I want to just see documents, of course, I can do that, and then everything is available right there. As I mentioned before, we go ahead and we take advantage of the two-pane view. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my matters list here. I'm going to go to the Larry Johnson lawsuit and go to the research folder. And I've got a number of documents here in my research folder. I've got a preview of the document over on the right-hand side, so we've got that split pane available to us. And if I go ahead and rotate the device, I can go ahead and, let's go ahead and collapse that first, rotate the device, and now I've got a portrait view of this document. I can go ahead and scroll through the document the way that I normally would. And then if I want to go ahead and switch back, simply reorient my device, I can go ahead and switch back to the two-pane view. So again, the functionality that we're providing from a user interface perspective, I think, takes great advantage of what's available on the iPad. And most importantly, it's consistent with, what users have come to expect. Just a few points to make on some of these documents that we're looking at here. As you saw, I was going through here and clicking on different documents. I'm getting a preview of the document on the right-hand side. But also, if you look at the list on the left, you see the numbers going down on the right-hand side of it. And the document that I've just selected has a 2. That's actually the version count. So I mentioned that versioning was, a key enhancement to this version of mobility, or the 2.0 family of the mobility solution. Just clicking on the 2 there brings up my document versions. Now I can go in and I can see version 1, version 2. If there were 10 versions, I'd see all those listed right here, and I can very easily go ahead and get to those versions. Looking at the right-hand pane, you'll notice down at the bottom we've got a number of different icons there. These allow me to see different aspects of the document. So, for example, I can see the document profile. So by clicking on the profile button, that shows me all the profile information, the client matter number, the author, and so forth. We also have the typical Apple or iOS action icon here. This allows me to go ahead now and take actions on this document. As I mentioned before, we've got the ability to go ahead and open this document, which I'll show you in just a moment. But any application that supports Open In, and you can see here that I use Office HD, I also have Dropbox installed, and I also have HP Flow CM. I can go ahead and open this document in any of those applications. If I have any printers defined, AirPrint printers, I can go ahead and print the document directly. And then, of course, I can go ahead and email the document. But what's very important to consider here is that I can email a link to the document, or I can email a copy of the document. And if I go ahead and email a link, I can either do it for the latest version or the current version. So once again, this is functionality that is very consistent with what users would expect from the desktop client WorkSite client applications, and we're able to provide this now on the mobile device. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I think, back to my document work list. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to open up a document here. So here's the document, and I want to go ahead and edit this document. I've got 3 versions of it right now, as you can see by the 3 there on the right-hand side. Let's go ahead and open this document in Office HD and make some changes to it. So this functionality would be the same regardless of which editing application you're using. As long as it supports Open In, you'll be able to do this. So here I've made some changes. I'll go ahead and click on the Save icon here. What I'm doing now is I'm saving that document within Office HD. So at this point, the document has been essentially exported out of WorkSite. As I mentioned before, it hasn't been checked out. It's basically been exported out as a copy. I've edited in Office HD. I've saved it to the local Office HD file store. I'll go ahead and close the document. But what I can do now is go in, and you see that in my list of local files under Today, I have my cross-examination notes, and we see that right here. So this is the document that I just edited today at 10:39 a.m. my time. And what I'm going to do in order to get these changes into WorkSite is click on the Open In button up here at the top. And what I'll tell it is that I want to open this in WorkSite. So when I do that, it now switches me back to mobility. It brings up WorkSite. It gives me at the top there an edit list. So WorkSite Mobility remembers which documents I was recently editing. I'll go ahead and select my cross-examination notes. And down there on the bottom, you see that I've got a button available for saving this as a new version, and I'm going to do that. So I click New Version, and at this point, if I want to go ahead and change the title of the document or the author name, I can certainly do that. I'm not going to do that in this case. I'm just going to go ahead and upload the document. So now I've gone ahead and I've uploaded the document. If we were to go back to my recent documents, to my document work list, we now see cross-examination notes right here, and we see that we now have 4 versions of this particular document. If we click on the 4, we will see that we have version 1, we have the version 2 that I edited in another demo, and version 3 in yet another demo, and version 4 finally, which I've edited in this demo. And very important to note here, if we look at the profile, you do see that when I imported that document back into WorkSite as the latest version, as version 4, it inherited all of the same matter-centric metadata that you would expect. Client matter number is there, default security has been set, all of the information, whatever information is set on the workspace and folder that I imported it back into, has all been inherited by the document. So it's a fairly seamless process as far as editing the content goes. So what I will show you now is document capture. So let's go back to my matters list. I'm going to go into my research folder here for 1081,000 and the Larry Johnson lawsuit, and I've got some documents in there. And what you might notice on the left-hand pane there is I've got a little camera icon up there in the top right of it. I'm going to click that camera icon, and I can now choose a photo that's already been taken that's sitting in my photo library, or I can take a photo. So I'm going to go ahead and take a photo. And once again, I'm going to try not to drop my iPad here. And I apologize for my messy desk, but this is a live demo, so I'm doing this live. And I'm just going to go ahead and take a picture of this customer contract. So I've taken a picture of it now, and I'm going to tell the system that I want to use this. And what we have done, you may have noticed there, it might have been a little bit hard for you to see, but what happened there was that when I took the picture, there was a purple border that surrounded it very quickly. And what it did was it cropped out. You notice when I took the picture, you saw a lot of extraneous stuff around the edges of the paper. For a minute there, you saw my coffee cup, you saw a computer mouse, maybe part of my computer keyboard. The system cut all of that information out automatically. So what we've done is we've leveraged technology from HP Labs, some of the imaging technology that HP has, and we've integrated that into the solution here so that we can automatically do cleanup on the document when we take the picture. So the great thing here is that it automatically did edge detection, it de-skewed the image, it cleaned it up. Now all I have to do is go ahead and enter a file name. And I'm just going to call this, the PetSmart contract for the extremely noisy parakeet that I bought my daughter at Christmas. And we'll go ahead and we'll upload this. And just as you saw when I imported the modified version previously when I edited that in Office HD, I can go ahead now in this new document. I can give it a different title if I want to. I can change the author and so forth. But I'm not going to do that in this case. I'm just going to go ahead and upload the document. So that document now has been uploaded, and we're looking at my uploads list right now. Let's go back to my matters list. And I'm here, just so you can see it, I'm here in the research folder, and there is my PetSmart contract. And unfortunately, it detected it because of the way I was holding the iPad. It picked it up in landscape mode as opposed to portrait. But you can see there that the contract has been imported. If we go ahead once again and look at the profile information, it was brought in as an image. In this case, it was brought in as a PNG image. But the client matter number has been applied. All of the metadata, all of the security information based on the location and the matter-centric hierarchy where I imported this document has all been applied. Okay. So You know, that particular scenario there, being able to capture content, I think is you know, just a great piece of functionality that really is going to enhance the user experience and just provide an additional level of functionality and usefulness that users again couldn't even dreamed of just, you know, several years ago. The last thing that I wanted to touch on very quickly was search. I mentioned this before. You know, the search capability, you see there that I can go ahead and set my search scope across the top, whether I want to search for workspaces, folders, documents, or email. I'm going to go ahead and search for documents for a particular client. I can certainly do a full text search as well. But just to show you the functionality, very easy to do a search. And as you can see here, when I search for documents for client 1080, all of these documents that came back are all client 1080 as we go through and take a look at those. Same rules would apply if I were searching for workspaces. We'll just take a step back. We'll set my scope to workspace. And I've already done a search for 1080, so I'll select that from my hot list. But when I do the search, my results come back. And once again, we're looking at all these different Matter workspaces now for my client 1080 for a motor company. Okay. So again, the searching functionality has, we've made an effort to try to provide all the functionality, including search, in a manner that's consistent with what users have come to expect. Okay. So that concludes my brief demo of iOS. What I'd like to do now is go ahead and switch back to my presentation. So I'll turn off my mirroring here. And let's go ahead and I will turn off sharing my desktop. And at this point, I don't know if there were any more questions that came in before I jump over to the next part of the presentation.
Yes, thank you for asking, Scott. One of our participants asked, are there any issues with documents getting locked if wireless connectivity is lost? I'm not sure if they're referring to check-in, check-out, or which way they're rolling, but that's the question. Are there any issues with documents getting locked if wireless connectivity is lost?
There is not, because we do not, once again, we are not checking any of these documents out. It's basically a document export, which is then edited locally. So if it were to fail or if something were to happen, it would not have any impact on the system.
All right. And the second question is, and we're not seeing the MicroStrategies desktop just yet, Scott, just for an FYI. Can you save something as a new document instead of saving it as a new version?
Yes.
Was that question?
Yes. You certainly can. You certainly can. So you do have the option to go ahead and save it as a new document or a new version in that particular case.
Okay.
And could you perhaps tell me, how do I get back to the presentation in
I think if you go back and scroll down your PowerPoints down there. See the PowerPoint?
Yeah,
there you go. That's it. Press your down button now. That you just did the down button.
That's my presentation. I was looking for the one that was actually uploaded in the, there we go. Disregard. I think we are fine. All right. So what I wanted to talk about now in the next 10 minutes that we have remaining or so is just a little bit about security. I mentioned before support for SSL. I wanted to go in a little more detail on that. So with starting with login security, as I said, we fully support Active Directory authentication. There's actually two different modes of Active Directory authentication that we can support. We can support, we can select whether or not to support IIS basic authentication. That means that if you want to do ADS authentication through the Internet Information Server that Mobility is running on, you can. If for whatever reason you choose not to, or that's against your security policies, we do have the ability to authenticate directly against ADS without using IIS basic authentication. In either case, SSL should always be used. You should always have an SSL certificate in place to make sure that passwords are encrypted as you're going over the network. Another question that comes up a lot and that we do support is third-party authentication through different methods like RSA Secure ID. So currently we do support RSA Secure ID if you're using RSA. That's fully integrated. All you have to do, as you can see in the screenshot there, is select third-party as your sign-in method, and then you can go ahead and put in your user ID and passcode from your RSA key fob, and we'll go ahead and authenticate via RSA. A few other notes on SSL and data protection specifically. SSL is a configurable option for both explicit and trusted login. Obviously, in a production environment, we always recommend that you use SSL. Talking about data protection, I mentioned this earlier, and Rick mentioned this as well, about the ability to store content in iOS's built-in encryption locker, if you will. Data protection is built in on every iOS device. Basically, the way it works is when you go ahead and you turn on the passcode lock feature on your iPhone or your iPad, it automatically turns on data protection. And that will encrypt the content, it will encrypt sensitive information like usernames and passwords. And the way that we have leveraged it is that third-party applications can take advantage of iOS APIs in order to do that. The way that you can tell, looking at the screenshot here, the way that you can tell whether data protection is enabled or not is you'll actually see it under your passcode lock settings in the settings on your iOS device. Along those same lines, but different from the iOS PIN security, is that WorkSite itself actually supports a PIN code security mechanism. So within the WorkSite application, you can actually, as a security option, set PIN code, which means that if I set my iPad down on my desk like I have just now, and it goes blank, it goes dark, somebody else picks it up, if they go to WorkSite, they won't be able to just go into WorkSite under my account. They'll actually get hit with the WorkSite PIN screen, and they'll have to put in my PIN code before they can actually access WorkSite. So it's just an additional layer of security specific for WorkSite that prevents unauthorized access in those scenarios. I also mentioned previously before about mobile device management and ways of addressing that. One of the things that we are hearing a lot of is good technologies. For those of you that are familiar with good technologies, that's great. For those of you who are not, Good Technologies is a mobile device management provider. What they, in a nutshell, and again, I'm not an expert on Good by any means. We would always refer you to Good to find more detailed information. But in a nutshell, they provide a solution called Good Dynamics that basically manages your entire mobile device infrastructure. And so it can manage iOS devices such that it will control which applications can be installed on which devices. It can do things like bandwidth management. It can provide an extra layer of security as far as encrypting the data on the devices. It actually provides a military-grade encrypted container that goes beyond what iOS provides natively through data protection. And then there's also something interesting known as the Good Dynamic Leakage Policy. And that allows you to control additional functionality in the device. So for instance, you can disable the ability to do cut and copy and paste. You can disable open-in. You can disable email functionality. These are all things that in our good integrated version of WorkSite Mobility, which is also available on the App Store, that we have tied into using the good APIs, so that if you are running that version of the application, you can actually disable that functionality. Other than that, there is absolutely no difference functionally between the good version of WorkSite Mobility and the non-good version. It just simply is compliant with Good's infrastructure. A little bit about the Good Dynamics architecture. Very similar to what you may or may not be familiar with RIM and Blackberry infrastructure. They actually have a network operating center that kind of serves as the nerve center for all good installations. And every good customer then runs a good control server in their own environment that communicates with the network operating center. So any mobile devices then have the ability through the good operating center to communicate with the control server on the customer's premises. And this allows the customer to do things like control which applications can be installed and so forth. So as an example, when you install WorkSite Mobility for good on a iOS device, you actually have to go to the Good App Store. Good has its own App Store of apps that have been by Good. And the customer actually has to select WorkSite and add the WorkSite application to their Good control server before you can go ahead and install it on a device. If you haven't done that, if the administrator has not done that, if you download it onto your device and you run your device is on is within the Good infrastructure, the application will actually just get deleted from your device. It will just disappear because it's not authorized. So that's an example of how the architecture control mechanisms. I mentioned before that in the 2.0 family of mobility, we support the full audit history. This is just a little snapshot of some of the actions that are available. Obviously, all content actions are captured in the WorkSite history. So if you edit a document, if you view it, if you email the document, all of those are there. And what we've done is we've customized the actions and the status and application entries to reflect that these different actions were done from a mobile device. So you can see there in the screenshot that the Mobility 2 service is listed as the application, or iOS if the document is uploaded, as I showed you with the capture. So all of that is captured. You have a full audit history. You'll totally be able to tell what people have done from their mobile devices. So finally, just in the last few minutes, talking a little bit about the Mobility 2 features. We had a question come up about iPhone before. The next thing on our plate, which is actually imminent as we speak today, is a release of the version 2.0 family for the iPhone. So while it is for a different platform, much of the functionality that I showed you for the iPad today will be available on the iPhone with this version of the solution. Some of the other miscellaneous enhancements that are coming, obviously the iPhone UI, which I mentioned, but also some additional things like some administration controls that make life easier, again, from a mobile device management standpoint, the ability to email out auto-config files and to administratively set PIN enforcement options so that all users have to use the WorkSite security PIN. And then finally, smart web links, so the ability to, basically if in an email, if a URL comes in, the ability to link that directly back to WorkSite Mobility is key as well. So looking at the roadmap, you see where we are today. Notice that I always refer to the 2.0 family of iOS. The actual version that we're on is actually 2.5 or 2.6 imminent, as I said. But commonly you'll hear us refer to the 2.0 family because the official name of the product is WorkSite Mobility 2, with a 2 on the end. So today we have the good technology client, the document editing and security features as I showed you, and then on the cusp, we have 2.6 with the iPhone UI. That, as we mentioned before, in answer to the question, the mobility server has completely been reworked to support both the iPhone and the iPad. And then looking off into the future, we're looking at providing some of those additional features like the URLs to redirect to WorkSite, one-click configuration that can be emailed out, expanding our SSL support, some of our third-party sign-on, and then we're looking at other things that we can do going beyond, like being able to provide full offline syncing of an entire matter file and even integrate with some of our other solutions, such as Autonomy Process Automation for workflow and some of our conflicts and new business intake solutions. And coming up right on the hour here, that concludes, my part of the presentation. Ann, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Scott. And in the interest of time, we haven't received any other questions, but we would welcome you emailing us with any other questions or calling us with any other questions you have. And Scott, you can go to the next slide there for me. All of us at MicroStrategies and Autonomy are really glad that you chose to spend part of your afternoon with us. Special thanks to Rick and Scott for providing their expertise. And we would really welcome having the opportunity of assisting you with designing a strategy and solution around your mobility requirements. So, as always, if you have any questions or you need any additional information, be sure you can reach out to me or any of my colleagues at MicroStrategies to help you with designing your legal technology roadmap for 2013. So, we're going to let you go. We recognize how valuable your time is, but we really hope that you'll choose to join us again at future MicroStrategies events or webinars or legal roundtables. Thank you once again. Stay warm for those of you on the East Coast. We're jealous of you on the West Coast. And thank you for your time, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks once again.